everyone, welcome once again to the dark and murky depths of the comic book vault. I'm Captain Logan. Today we're taking a look at Batman No Man's Land Volume 2. If you missed last episode, we went through the first volume and did kind of an overview/review of the first part of No Man's Land. I'm doing these as complete spoiler reviews so that I can kind of catch people up to speed who have never had a chance to read this, or remind you if it's been a while. So if you don't want this spoiled at all, be sure to read it on your own before you take a look at what I have to say about it. And again, mostly what I'm doing is just kind of going through and letting folks know what happens in it. And of course, I'll give my my opinions here and there where I feel it's warranted. So, as I mentioned last time, one of the unfortunate things about reading No Man's Land in trade is that while it's a complete story, it's hard to read sometimes because of the artwork. The artwork gets really jarring in places because it's just not very consistent because it was between so many different books. And of course, Nightfall is this way too, and a lot of these kinds of things are this way. Naturally, Death of Superman, Reign of the Supermen, all of that is that way too because, after all, it was running through 4 different books. This is very similar, but this is tougher even than those for me just because the art styles are so different. I gotta tell you, I don't really like hardly any of the art in Volume 2, unfortunately. It either is too cartoony, or too sketchy, or too extremely exaggerated. There's a section here where Gordon is drawn so crudely that he's nearly creepy, like he's nearly grotesque looking. And I'm sure there's an artistic reason for that. That's a section that's a lot about how Commissioner Gordon keeps, constantly arguing with his wife about how things should be done in the Gotham City Police Department territory of No Man's Land, and specifically about how he is obsessively trying to tag over all of the Batman tags because he doesn't believe Batman's back. Even if Batman is back, he doesn't want Batman back because he's so angry with him for leaving, and really for a lot of other things that are more fundamental about their relationship. But I get that he's kind of losing it, and he's constantly angry, and I think that the art is supposed to be a reflection of how Gordon is sort of losing his mind. But it's still too grotesque for me for Gordon. It's already in some places because he's so angry and he's such a loose cannon right now. It's already kind of difficult for me to like him. I mean, I understand why he's doing what he's doing, and ultimately, if I'm remembering No Man's Land right, it ends up going in a direction where I become more and more okay with it. But right now, he's hard to listen to for me because he complains all the time, and for him to be drawn that way, then it's even tougher. So anyway, there's a lot of that going on in here. So the one artist I will count out as somebody that I really liked is, his name is Phil Winslade, who just happens to write the one Bob Gale section of this one. And if you remember from last time, I was talking about how impressed I was with Bob Gale's writing, and how I hadn't realized before this that Bob Gale was even involved in this, just because there was a time when I didn't really keep up with creators all that much, and I pay a lot more attention to it now, so it's like, oh wow, it's Bob Gale. And he writes what happens to be my favorite section in this, not just because it's him, but it really is my favorite section in this, and also Winslade's is his artist, and I still don't like even his art better than anything that was in the first volume. But anyway, let's go ahead and get into the story. So this opens up with Batman finally making himself known in Gotham. He's been back for a while, but he says a month in I almost said Arkham City. a month in No Man's Land is an eternity, and these other people have been there for 4 months, and he's only been there for a month now, and so they know the lay of the land. They have a better idea of how to get information. And as I was saying last time, a lot of what's really interesting about watching Batman in this is that he's got to change his entire mode of operations. He can't rely on technology anymore. He's got to rely on word of mouth just like everybody else. But he says it's not fast enough for him, and so he's got to build his own network. And so what he does is he decides to find a way to go in and not shut Penguin down, but use Penguin, because Penguin's got the biggest network of anybody in Gotham, and he's the one who remember from last time, has some kind of a way to get things to and from Gotham, and so he's got this he's living at large, in No Man's Land, and he's got, he's holding all the keys right now, basically, and he's you know, his territory is very large, and he's got all these followers, and everybody, he says at one point, everybody at some point makes their way to Penguins, because he's got the resources, and he can trade things, and he treats, what's interesting is that Penguin treats everybody as equals, you know, anybody who comes in can trade things, but anybody who double crosses him, you know, they get the same fate. And so anyway, Batman comes up with this clever way to, or what he thinks is a clever way to come in and try to use the Penguin's resources to kind of start getting information from the Penguin's network. And at first it doesn't work because the Penguin has this. He's got this big kind of wrestling ring going on, and all these people are coming in and paying things. They're betting on who's going to be the winner in these fighting matches. And so Batman comes in and he says, "Well, I'll fight your big guy," you know, whoever the champion is. There's this, you know, big guy, and Batman says, well, I'll fight him, and if I win, then you know, you have to shut this stuff down, and you have to let me, you know, you have to give me all the information that you get, and you know, so that Batman can operate better in No Man's Land. That's pretty much what he wants, and Penguin's like, well, no, we both know you can take this guy, but can you take all of these guys? And he lines up all these thugs, you know, and so Batman has to fight all these people, and he's just fighting for hours and hours and hours. And what ends up happening, and like Penguin's thinking on his feet, and Batman didn't know that was going to happen. So so you know, Batman underestimated the Penguin because things work differently now, and so Batman. The one thing that bothered me about this section is that I feel like Batman kind of won on accident, because what ends up happening is all these people make bets on Batman, and they bet more than the Penguin can possibly pay out. See, the Penguin thinks that everybody's going to bet on all these other guys because of the odds, but just because he's Batman, everyone bets on Batman, and so then Penguin shuts the whole thing down, and all these people get angry because they're not being paid out. And Penguin thinks he's being clever too, because he says, well, this isn't really a fair fight because these are supposed to be death matches, and Batman's not killing anyone, so I don't have to pay out. And it was a good idea, but it didn't work, and so all these people are creating a mob around him and about to try to kill the Penguin. And so Batman ultimately gets what he wants, and he leaves Penguin alone, but Penguin has to build a network so that Batman gets all the information that he gets. Anything that comes through Penguin has to now also go through Batman. And the problem with that is I don't feel like Batman really got there with his own ingenuity, because after all, how would he really know that everyone was going to bet on him? Keep in mind that this is playing itself up as a world where nobody was even entirely sure Batman existed before he shows up in No Man's Land. It's that kind of world, which I'm always a little bit suspicious of, because you have a lot of Batman stories where there's like Batman's pictures in a newspaper, and you know, people get glimpses of him, you know, on TV and things like that, where like, you know, somebody videotapes him or whatever. But then still he's still in urban legend somehow, and I think that's a lot harder to play up in current comics now, just because of the technology that we have, with, you know, everybody having you know, cameras and video in their phones and things like that now. A little bit easier to swallow in the 90s, but still, I always kind of wondered about it. And so here, you know, these people didn't even know if he existed, which I guess would build up his myth more, where it's like, is he human? Does he have superpowers? All those sorts of things. But even still, it doesn't even seem like Batman was betting on that, because he thought he was going to be able to just fight this one guy, and then he was fighting all these other people. So anyway, I don't know. That's my one complaint about that, is I feel like Batman got lucky, and the story plays it up like it's his ingenuity. But whatever. Then after that, we start really dealing with, just for a little bit, the Black Mask stuff. Now here's what's interesting. I feel like No Man's Land doesn't read nearly as well by itself without also reading the novelization. And this is the only thing that I've also read the novelization too, that I would say that with. And I know I talk about Greg Rucka's novel a lot. The reason I'm bringing it up here is because he really goes in depth into the Black Mask stuff and into the Black Mask philosophy about anonymity and about everyone, how everyone's faces are a mask, and so everyone has to, it's really gruesome, like all of his followers have to cut off the flesh on their faces so that they're all the same, and yeah, but Greg Rucka really goes into that philosophy. This doesn't. It really gleans right over it, and it's kind of over before it begins. I was surprised, and actually in the novel, I remember, and it's been a while since I've read it, so I may be remembering this wrong, but I actually kind of remember the Black Mask stuff going on a little longer than I would have liked it. But at least we got more of that philosophy, and we got more of Black Mask. I got to be honest with you, because all of his because he's built up this big cult, which is really interesting, and I would have liked to have seen it a little bit more of it visually, because I mean that's what's nice about reading it in comic book form, is that you do get the visuals to go along with it. This is a book that feels like it really wants to be a novel, and maybe I'm saying that because I've read the novel and it all kind of works a little bit better. Just because there's more time to really, I mean, it's a thick book, and then there's more time to really get into people's ideals and philosophies and the way they're trying to survive and those kinds of things. Here, because I'm seeing all these people looking exactly the same because they've all kind of cut their faces off, I didn't even realize Black Mask was Black Mask until somebody came right out and said that he was. Like when Batman takes them all down, and we finally and Black Mask finally reveals himself. I didn't even realize that was Black Mask. I thought that was one of his other followers. So anyway, that's actually in places a little bit confusing, but I was just also kind of surprised by how long it doesn't go on. That, by the way, is the same section where I think Gordon is drawn really strangely. Barbara Gordon is really interesting in this because she is really angry when she finds out about the new Batgirl, and she's mostly mad at Batman for allowing this. One theme that I'm really enjoying in this is the theme of ownership. The idea that in an uncivilized place like this, who owns what and how do they keep it? And the ideas of ownership are very different when you don't have the laws and the overhead to back that up, the oversight rather, excuse me, to back that up. And so when you have somebody like Barbara Gordon who is really learning how to play the field in this, and to kind of bend the natural rules of what No Man's Land seems to be, where she still has figured out how to have some computer access, and she uses more technology than anybody else does, and that kind of thing, but still, of course, has to adjust to this new world. She still feels that because of the old days, she owns Batgirl, and now somebody else has come in and is calling herself that and has taken up that mantle. And it's interesting because she seems to be the person who most has managed to stay civilized in this uncivilized world, and then she very quickly, because of this new Batgirl, really falls back on these kind of like primal feelings of ownership. You know, this is mine, and how dare somebody else take it? And so she's not interested in territory and land like other people are. Everyone going around and marking their territory and saying, this is mine and this is mine. For her, you know, she's an intellectual, she's a thinker. So these ideas are her, and someone stole her idea. And how dare Batman allow that? Well, Batman is being really smart, actually, in working with this new Batgirl, because he hasn't really let himself work with anybody else. And he's discovering more and more that he can't do all these things alone. So he's finally kind of employing some people and working with some people, one of whom is Lockup, which I think is really interesting. Batman gets his hands on Blackgate Prison, and he is the only person with a prison now. We were talking about prisons last time, where the Gotham City Police Department doesn't know what to do with the demons and the low boys when they finally take them down, because they don't have anywhere to put them. They don't have a jail. But Batman gets his hands on Blackgate. And actually, one thing I like about this is there's a map in these, and I don't know if there's one in each volume. I forget, but there's one in the first and one here where it tells you. It color codes it and tells you, or color codes it rather, and tells you who owns what territories. And you see that Batman's got almost half of Gotham now. His territory's gotten huge, and he's managed to take Blackgate. And so what he does is when he finds when he takes down perps, as they call them, he puts them in Blackgate, and Lockup's in charge of them. And but the thing is, there are people, and this is one of the things I find most fascinating about this volume. There are a lot of people, and there's several instances of this, that try to either do crimes or fake crimes so they get thrown in Blackgate because they're safer there than they'd be anywhere else. And because because Batman, of course, is humane, anybody he puts in Blackgate, he takes care of. He gives them food, and of course they have shelter because they're in a prison, and they're taken care of. And that's the most important thing in this new Gotham. And so, of course, people would be inevitably trying to get themselves thrown in jail, because that's kind of the cushiest kind of living you could possibly ask for here. And it's really interesting how your perspectives change, how suddenly freedom isn't nearly as important as a roof over your head for some people. And of course, Batman won't allow it, and he won't just put somebody in the jail because they ask him to. And so then there's at least one place here where somebody tries to kill somebody, so that they get thrown into Blackgate. So it's all these nuances that I find really interesting. By the way, real quick, there's a lot of little short stories that are kind of their own self-contained stories in this, just sort of like tales from no man's land. And there's even one story about Renee Montoya and Two-Face that happens during the Cataclysm, or just after Cataclysm, before No Man's Land. And so this is less cohesive of a thing than the first volume, because the first volume is basically two stories, each in 4 parts. In one volume, and this is a lot of little stories with the big stuff happening around it. Really, in the middle is where you get all these little short stories. Moving on, we get into what I, like I said, think is the best story in this, which is Bob Gale's story about Batman trying to figure out what to do with this baby that these two women are fighting over. And the baby is neither of theirs. A lot like the classic biblical story, and actually, but they're fighting over. And actually, Batman tries to do what's done in that story. He says, "Well, I'll just cut it in half," and then his idea after saying that is that whichever one is willing to give up the baby so that it doesn't die, that's the one that he'd give it to. But they don't buy it, and so he realizes that's not going to work, and so he just takes the baby and leaves, and he's trying to figure out what to do with it. And then Alfred tells him this really interesting story about Thomas Wayne. And actually, there's this great touch where Batman is sitting there in his cape and cowl, and Alfred, in order to help Batman make this decision about this baby, is going to tell him this story about Thomas Wayne. But he tells Batman to take off his cowl, and Bruce says, "Why?" And he says, and Alfred says, "Because any story told about Thomas Wayne should be told to his son Bruce." And I really love that. That's a great little nuance. And so basically, there's this story about how there was this person late at night who was dying. And somebody came to Thomas Wayne and asked him to come to help. And so he came to help and needed a certain kind of antibiotic or something, and it was late at night and nothing was open. So he did the only thing he thought he could do, and he broke into a drugstore and he stole the antibiotics he needed. And then the next day he left it. I mean, he went back and basically he broke through a window and he stole it. And he leaves a note, and he says he's going to pay for it. And then, but things get complicated because some kids or somebody from a gang or someone, we're not told who, comes in and steals some things from the drugstore, and so now the guy's out even more money. And so he asks, basically he blackmails Thomas Wayne and says that either Thomas Wayne's going to pay for it or he's going to take him to court over it. And of course, he didn't really do anything, and he was going to pay for the damages he actually did do, but he thought that this drugstore owner would understand that in the middle of the night this person was dying and he needed antibiotics. And what I really like about this is that it has a lot to do with the No Man's Land, because because it's blurring the lines of the laws of civilization versus necessity. And I think this is a great story. And so basically this guy keeps holding this over his head, and so then he calls him the next day and he says, well, my insurance is raising my rates, and I need you to pay the difference, and if you don't pay the difference, I'm taking you to court. And then it just keeps getting more and more outlandish, and he keeps coming to Thomas Wayne more and more for money. And keep in mind that, of course, Thomas Wayne is a doctor, but he's also got this family fortune, so he's rich and everybody knows it. So finally, Alfred kind of saves the day because Alfred comes up with this plan for them to come in, and Alfred actually pretends to be a police officer, which is against the law in and of itself. And anyway, they go in, and in front of everybody, out him right there in front of everybody, and he's just like, and Bruce is just like, hey officer, this guy is, or not Bruce, I'm sorry, Thomas, hey officer, this guy is blackmailing me. And then you hear, and then you see like somebody who's shopping in there say, yeah, and maybe you could get him to stop overcharging us too, so apparently this guy's a total sleazeball. And anyway, so that leads Batman to realize that what you have to do in these tough situations is, and this is a great lesson. I don't think that this is like an annoyingly preachy story or a morality play. I think this is a really well told story with a really good lesson, where the idea is you have to figure out what people want more than something else. What is more important to them? This guy's business, of course, more important to him than getting more and more money from Thomas Wayne, and so he was able to figure out a loophole. And so what Batman does is he realizes that what these two women want the most is to take care of this baby. Now, I gotta be honest with you, that's the one thing I don't get about the story, is you're in the middle of a no man's land, and it's hard enough to feed yourself. Why on earth would two women be so obsessed with wanting to raise this baby that's not theirs in a no man's land? I really don't understand that. I guess I could kind of buy that it's kind of that maybe it's just a mother thing where like both of them, maybe they don't tell us this, like maybe both of them always wanted a child and couldn't have one, and this is like their one chance or something. But I really don't like the stereotypical idea that it's just, oh, they're women so they want this baby. I don't know. That's the one thing I didn't really buy about it. But anyway, so basically what Batman does is he says, look, basically you two women can raise it together and come together to raise this kid because after all, one person is not enough in no man's land. Because the issue was one of them had left the baby to go off and get food, and so the other one found it, and so she's like, oh, this woman's negligent. Batman, you can't let her raise this kid. And so Batman tells them that they have to raise it together, and that ends up being the most sensible solution because at first they're both like, oh no, I don't want to do that, it's rightfully mine, and then Batman makes them think about it, and it's like, what do they want more? What is most important to them? And so they have to sacrifice ownership because the most important thing to them is that they get to raise this kid. So anyway, I thought that was great. Also, I wanted to mention, I'm being really long-winded about this, but I think it's really interesting that Thomas Wayne, the way he's drawn in this flashback section, actually looks a little bit like the actor who played him in Batman Begins, which I thought was cool and surprising because, of course, Batman Begins wasn't made yet. And then the end of this is all about Two-Face and the Penguin vying for power. And basically what happens is Gordon comes up with this plan that nobody's happy with to try to take Penguin's territory, and they know that they don't have enough manpower to do this, and he's, like I said, he's kind of losing it a little bit, and but he knows that if they don't do something, they're gonna start losing more and more territory to Penguin and to other people. I mean, Killer Croc's got a gang, Mr. Freeze has a gang. And I'm not sure I buy, by the way, the idea of Killer Croc actually leading people. He was always a loner before, but again, I guess No Man's Land kind of can change things. We haven't seen Killer Croc yet, so I'm not sure what exactly he's up to, but we know he has a gang, and I don't know. I did kind of resist that idea a little bit. Killer Croc's got a gang. He always was kind of a loner, but I guess part of the reason he was a loner was because he was a freak, and there's not really so much of an idea of freaks in No Man's Land, so maybe that's the idea. But anyway, so basically, not to get too far into it, but all together, Gotham City Police Department tries to take over Penguin's gang and or Penguin's territories. Meanwhile, Two-Face. His people try to take over Batman's, and they set up a trap for Batman, and he falls for it. And while he falls for it, they go into his territories. And guess what? Batman doesn't have an army. And the only person there to protect his territory is Batgirl. She does what she can, but she can't keep it. And so by the time Batman finally gets out of this trap, which I won't go into, and gets back there, she's basically lost some of his territory, and Two-Face has started getting his men to tag over Batman's tags. And anyway, it's really kind of sad how it happens, and Batgirl, this new Batgirl, who again, we're not told who she is yet. I really like her a lot. She's trying so hard to be worthy of the mantle and to prove herself to Batman. And it's really sad to see what happens to her, because she gets defeated, and there was no possible way she could have held that by herself. Interestingly, of course, Huntress is missing in this entire volume. We don't see her at all, and it's kind of left as to a mystery as to what exactly she's doing and where she is right now. But anyway, that's pretty much everything I have to say about Volume 2, and thanks as always for watching. We'll get into Volume 3 tomorrow. And if you ever want to send anything for me or Vince to review, you can always send it to the P.O. Box. That's Geekvolution, P.O. Box 14183, Lenexa, Kansas 66285. See you next time. Hope you're enjoying No Man's Land. I'm Captain Logan, and happy reading.